Alright guys, welcome back. In this session, we'll be going through the case of an endless loop and how do we overcome that using the application.enable events. Okay, so I have a very simple question. Okay, perform a validation using the worksheet change event. Okay, so we are going to use a worksheet change event. If the user is in address A15, so basically this cell that's highlighted in yellow of sheet 1, this sheet here, okay, there's only one sheet in this workbook. And if the user enters a value that is greater or equal to 12, so if the user enters a value that is greater or equal to 12, return a message box that says validated. Okay, if it's below 12, set the value of the cell to 0. Okay, right? So if the user enters below 12, it's going to return us the value 0. Okay, note, use application.enable events to prevent endless loop. Right? So a seemingly benign question, but if you're not careful, you will run into an endless loop. Okay, so let's just look at it, right? Okay, so the first thing is I'm just going to insert a module. I'm going to insert a module for the message box validated. Remember when I told you that I do not like to write my statement codes on the worksheet event, right? So we're going to stick to that practice. Okay, so I'm just going to call this summon, right? Just say message box validated, right? Validated. So this will be called if the value is greater or equals to 10. Okay. Next thing is I'm going to trigger my worksheet. And what event I'm interested in? Change event, right? So the difference between change and selection change is selection change is when you're moving from one cell to another. Change is when you are changing the value in a cell. Okay. So keep that in mind. And that are the two most common worksheet events that we deal with, right? So the first thing I'm going to say target.address. So since we don't have to use the not intersect, it's nothing because we only have a single cell. Yeah, so 0, 0 equals to A15, right? That was the cell, if I remember. Then, what I'm going to say, target.address. So if I'm on A15, and if the target, so target is the value, right? The value that is triggered, right? The value that is triggered, the value that is going to trigger the worksheet change event, right? That's the target, okay? So if target.value is greater or equals to 12, so this is how we express it, okay? This is how greater or equals. Then I'm going to write call what? We're going to say it's validated, right? So what was the procedure name? Summon, right? Summon, right? As in like summoning, right? Capital S, right? Yeah. So be careful of the uppercase and lowercase, right? They are case sensitive. Case procedures have to be properly addressed. Okay. So if it's target of value is greater than 12. So if I'm in A15 and the second line, if I'm greater than 12, then it's going to call summon. Else, if target.value is less than 12, right? Then I have to target of value is less than 12. Then what I'm going to say, right? I'm going to say target.value equals to 0. And then I'm just going to and the if and the if, the second if, right? Is this right? Well, if I run this code, we're going to run into an endless loop. You know why? Because let's have a look at this. Let's inspect this code, right? If my target address is in A15, and if my target is greater than 12, then it's going to call summon address. So there's no problem here. But we will run into an endless loop if our target value is less than 12. Because as soon as this value is registered into the worksheet of which address? A15. So by having this value and populated into the sheet 1 of the address A15, what we're doing is we will trigger the worksheet change event, right? We will trigger the worksheet change event as we are changing the value here, right? This will trigger the worksheet change event as we are changing the value. All right, we're changing the value that is being designated here, right? This worksheet change event is going to be triggered when the target address is equals to A15, right? So anytime there's a change in A15, this thing is going to run, right? So what's going to happen is that you change it to 0, and then it's going to run back again. So we're going to go into an endless loop. Right? So what we have to do is we have to disable the change event procedure. Okay, and the way we do it is we're going to use application.enable events equals false. So I'm anticipating that this is going to trigger the worksheet change event. That's why I have the application.enable events equals false, right? This will disable the change event procedure. Okay, and we place it right before where we anticipate the line where we anticipate the worksheet change event is going to be triggered, right? So we've changed the event and then we want to enable it back, right? So we've changed it. If it's been disabled, now the value has been inputted and we want to re-enable the event, right? So a seemingly benign question, but it's one that is very critical for you to pay attention. Enable the change event back. So, because if you're not careful, you would end up in an endless loop, right? So now if I go to A15 and I enter a value of 12, right? Greater than or equals 12, message box validated. 15, message box validated. Now what happens if I input the value 11? It's going to, see, it's giving us a value 0 and we're not running into an endless loop, right? So that's exactly what I meant when I told you that you have to be careful with endless loop, and the way to overcome it is to use the application.enable events to disable the change event procedure, and we park it right before where we anticipate, right before the line where we anticipate the worksheet change event, or the worksheet selection change, whatever event is going to be triggered and result in an endless loop.